no doubt we will have a visitor in here. Let's get going. Year 10. Do, 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 do. Right, I've shared it in Teams. Hopefully you guys will start coming over. So, while I'm just waiting for people to come over, I know it's sunny, so I'm expecting less than normal. I had a problem with my USB yesterday in terms of marking, so hopefully I'll get this to you, even if it's your mocks to you as soon as possible. But it did die yesterday, so yeah, pray for me. This is our last lesson before half term. You will not get any work from me next week because it is half term and we all need a bit of a break in terms of the online learning stuff. So yeah, your first lesson will be on the 1st of June. That will appear on Teams and show my homework on the 31st of May, she says. She's saying that really tentatively. Yeah, on the 31st of May, so on the Sunday, that will be on there. All right. But otherwise, I'm going to get going and just go over what we're doing today. Now, obviously, I'm keeping this in the same format. It's what the other groups are doing. We've got one more reel after today, one more lesson, and then I'm going to do a little bit of recapping for you with a video, and then we'll do some exam technique as well, just with this particular topic, so that you know what we're doing really and how to answer the questions. Again, I don't know what it's going to look like in terms of you coming in as of the 1st of June. We don't know what that looks like yet, so just hang tight. Hopefully we will be able to get you in at some point, but like I said, just hang tight on that one. Right then, so organisation of the Met Police. We looked at crime and policing in Whitechapel on Monday, so we looked at how the H Division was responsible for Whitechapel. There was a lot of issues in terms of the environment of Whitechapel, so the alcohol, the prostitution, the rookeries, the lodging houses. That was a major part of the crime. Now, although we do have got a focus on Whitechapel and H Division itself, we do have to look at the wider organisation of the Met Police in order to understand how Whitechapel was policed. And it all starts with recruitment. Must be a nerves thing, I think. Recruitment then. Now, recruits were usually people from outside of London. Now, the reason that these recruits were chosen outside of London is they were seen to be bigger, stronger, healthier. In London, there's you can probably, if you've been, there is a lot of what's the word? Pollution. That's the word. And a lot of poor hygiene. It's quite overcrowded. Even today, there's a lot of pollution in London, and people that were seen to come from the countryside outside of London that weren't particularly city dwellers seem to be the more healthier recruits. Okay. Now, they also felt that they were more likely to be honest men. They didn't have any connections in London. They didn't know the people there. They would be able to do a beat routine, which we'll go on to in a minute. Arrest criminals because they had no loyalties, and they were much more likely to be honest. Let me pull you forward a little so you can see the board a little bit better. Now, it obviously was a steady form of employment, okay? You had regular income, regular hours. It was more, okay, regular hours, regular income, and it was unlike other jobs. It was very steady, and it was a reliable job as well as a career. So just like, today, if you were a teacher, you start as a teacher, like just a normal teacher, and there's no such thing, but there you go. And then you can work your way up into roles like pastoral, or into head of departments, and then you can work your way up a little bit higher to be head of faculty, and then you can work up to be an assistant head teacher or a deputy head teacher, and you work your way up the pyramid. Well, this steady employment allowed officers that had, a good record to work their way up the ranks to get sergeant, and have a career. Okay. Promotions, wages, and security. Okay. So that's the main thing about recruitment. There was a height limit. There was a minimum height requirement, is the word I'm looking for. So you're all going to be completely shocked by this. Is that I still, even back in the day, would not make the police because you had to be 5'5", which right now seems like a really short. Is short. I can't even be nice about it, can I? Is 5'5" for a guy is short. But because of the issues back then with pollution, with nutrition, with the living conditions, 5'5" was relatively average for guys. So you can imagine I would have been a tall woman. Yes, at 5'1". So yeah, there was these height requirements. There was again these character issues that you needed to have to be part of the police. Right, let's have a little look at the beat then. Now, we don't tend to have the beat as much anymore due to not getting like political or anything, but due to policing cuts and different priorities for our police. I'm sick of yawning when it comes to the live stream. Hey Jack, when it comes to like the beat, it's usually now done as a extra security measure. So like when, sorry to bring this up again, but when the Manchester bombings happened, I ended up coming home for a bit because it was just before half term, and actually it's the anniversary on Friday, and I ended up going home, and then I came back, and I've never seen so many police around in my life. There was police on every corner. So the beat is a way to have an obvious presence on the streets. It's to have a physical police officer on the streets, so that it's trying to prevent crime. Have I spelled that right? Yeah. Okay, so it's having that visual people on the streets so that you can prevent crime. They can arrest anyone committing crime. They can investigate crimes that are potentially going to happen, stop them, break them up, that kind of thing. And it was a specific routine. Okay, so each officer had their own patrol, all right, and they had to walk at a certain speed so that they could be tracked, and they had to memorize everything in terms of their routine. So when we're talking about like a routine, we're talking like a couple mile radius, and they had to be able to do it. I say a couple mile radius. It's probably about a mile or so radius. depending on how quick you are. And you had to have completed the whole routine within half an hour. I'll go on to this a little bit more in a second. But the knowledge of that beat routine had to be done by heart. So you had to know your route, your timings, but also you needed to know what sort of things came off there. So, like, if you went, for example, if the beat routine was at the school, you would need to know that if you came out of the school and you turned left, you'd be heading towards like Barncoose, or you'd be heading to that mini roundabout. And then if you went on the roundabout and you went right, you'd be heading to Barncoose, or if you went left, you'd be going up towards town. Whereas if you came out of the school and you went right, you'd be going more towards either Aldi or Lidl. And you need to know, basically what I'm getting at is all the businesses around, the different alleyways and pathways. So like we had the exit from the Leats, didn't we, around the Leats before, and now we don't have that. But you needed to know that as a police officer. You would need to know the exits, entrances, the businesses, all the different ways a potential criminal could go and operate and what they could do. So in terms of the uniform then, we'll go more onto the routine in just a second, because it'll need a whole thing. The uniform, just like now, was pretty smart and quite distinctive. So now you've got that blue-black, haven't you, uniform that we see a lot of black elements, the white shirt. Well, initially it was a blue-black woolen trouser and jacket. Almost like a suit. Okay, that thick, heavy-duty woolen kind of material. They would be given they had to have their buttons really, really shiny. They had a helmet. Now, these helmets were quite clever. They were designed, and I think the design actually hasn't changed, so that if they got a blow to the head, it would direct the blow downwards and protect their head rather than having a direct blow to the head. So it would kind of make a blow go down rather than on. They would also be given a truncheon. Now, a truncheon is like a baton, almost like a big. It's like it's almost like a mini bat. Also, handcuffs. I'm worried that you can't see that last one just. And a lantern, so that they could then use the lantern for warmth if they were out on a cold winter's evening or a cold winter's day, and also light for when it got dark. And they also had a whistle. Yeah, these pens are much better. Okay, so going back to the routine, because this is, I would say, quite important. This actually hasn't come up on an essay question yet, just so you know. So like I said, they had to do it in half an hour. So it was a 30-minute routine. They also had to reach a certain part in their routine by a certain time. So they'd have like a timetable, like a bus timetable of where the bus is going to be at the bus stop at this particular time. And like, I know the one that's outside my house has to come at 28 minutes past or 52 minutes past or whatever, however you do it. Anyway, it's like 28 minutes past the hour, and then like every 52 the hour, something like that. And that is because then people can be at that point ready, waiting for that bus to arrive and get on it. Well, similarly, the police officer would need to be at a certain point at a certain time, just in case they needed to be contacted. And then if they didn't arrive on time, or even ever, and the person that was there, like their sergeant or their another police officer that was needed help or whatever, if they didn't arrive on time, one, there could be a problem with them and they needed help, or two, it would be to get a message that they needed to go be deployed somewhere else, whatever. But they had to be there at a certain time. Okay. Now, this 30-minute routine was in the day. That's really key to say. And they would do this beat patrol alone. It's solo, everybody. So they would do it on their own. Yeah, you've missed me singing. And they would, like I said, they'd have to know all of this and do it on their own. And again, there wasn't that respect very much in terms of the police, but there was more of a fear, I would say. So they would generally be left alone. At night, it was only a 15-minute routine. And also, any night routine or any night beat routine completed by a police officer would be done in pairs, because it was much, much more difficult to police on their own, and also it was dangerous. Criminals were out in the night during this time particularly, and lone police officers would get attacked. At least if they had a bit of backup there, then it would be, they could defend themselves a little bit easier. Now, they would often have to reverse the routines, because it got to a point where criminals would sit and watch the beat routine, and they'd be writing down when these officers came. So say if there was a pub that they wanted to go and rob, they could sit and watch the officer come past every half an hour. So they'd wait for the officer to do his routine past the pub or the place that they wanted to commit criminal activity, and then have 30 minutes to do it. So quite often the beat routines would be reversed or changed up ever so slightly to try and catch these criminals out. Like I said, there needed to be a knowledge of the wider area too. So they needed to know the pubs, the shops, the alleyways around their beat, just so that they had a good idea of where criminals could go. Now, we learn about this more in the side of the crime bit of the course, but we do touch on it a little bit in the Whitechapel case study. But the Metropolitan Police, when it was first set up, suffered an awful lot of corruption. People were not honest. They used the Met Police as a way to gain political power, monetary influence, and there was a lot of things what we call corruption. So when the beat routine was established in London and things had started to settle down a little bit, officers or police officers were rotated on their routine every month. So they would have to know their 30-minute routine and their 15-minute night routine off by heart, have all the knowledge of the alleyways, the pubs, the shops, everything. But it would only be for a month. And then after a month, they'd have to do it all over again, just so that they never got too comfortable in their area. But also then it couldn't lead to any dodgy deals with the organised criminals and gangs. So that's the beat routine. We are doing really well. Okay, the next element that we need to look at is the Criminal Investigation Department, even, or the CID. This is the first detective force. So if you ever watch like the programs like Vera or Frost or Law and Order, things like that, they'll say the investigating officer is from CID, and it was set up in 1877. Okay. And the main job initially, when it was set up, of a detective was to observe and gather information about different cases. Now, they used things like photography, but there was no real reliable way to gather this evidence. It was mainly witness statements and observations of um, officers or what they'd observed, the photographs that they had, obviously the bodies and the autopsies, but there were no forensics. Okay, there was no fingerprints, there was no blood traces, there was none of that. It was a case of gathering evidence from what they had and tips from informants. Okay, the next element that we've got to look at is the Home Secretary and Sir Charles Warren. Now, Sir Charles Warren, this guy here, I am going to call him SCW for right now. He was in 1886 appointed the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Meaning that he was in charge, oh, there we go, of the Met Police and what they did, how they ran. Okay. Now, although it was funded by the London authorities, so the local London like government, it was actually under the jurisdiction, so under the control of the Home Secretary. Effectively making Charles Warren's boss the Home Secretary. Now, Charles Warren was did wonderful things for the Met Police in that he increased. You're a bit late, Fletcher. You're a bit late. You are. You've missed most of the lesson. It's all right then. Good boy. Hey, Cameron. Good boy. So Charles Warren did things like he increased the military drills. And he tightened up rules for recruitment. He brought in more ex-soldiers. He was criticised for his work in 1887 with the Trafalgar Square demonstration, and they felt that the police was a bit more like an army rather than a police force. However, it was seen as quite a positive thing in terms of the recruitment side, because they then got the best of the best in terms of the men. They didn't just get honest men from outside the country. They got the strongest, the fittest. They got ex-soldiers. They got people that were more disciplined, which meant that the corruption tended to go, or not tended to, the corruption did start to completely eradicate from the police, rather than it being more about you having a good character. However, Sir Charles Warren was the Met Police Commissioner during the 1888 Jack the Ripper murders. Now, we all know from just from legend, Jack the Ripper was never caught, and he brutally murdered at least 5 women that we know of. There is suggestion that he killed more, and it wasn't just a quick stab, off we go. He literally ripped these women to pieces. So that then meant that in 1888, so Charles Warren got a lot of criticism for how the police were handling the Jack the Ripper case. Okay. The killer was seen to, or Jack the Ripper seemed to be running rings around the police. The police seemed to be getting nowhere. They seemed incapable of catching Jack the Ripper. And in a very angry exchange between the Home Secretary and Sir Charles Warren, Warren felt that he had no other choice but to resign because he'd not caught Jack the Ripper. And the relationship between the Home Secretary and the Commissioner completely broke down and caused even more pressure for the Met Police, but also caused a lot of criticism, and the confidence of the public in the Met Police totally declined. Like I said, there was the feeling towards the Met Police. I'm going to kind of leave this here now. The feeling towards the Met Police was not great. People felt that the police were spying on them, that they weren't there to help, that they were there just to cause more issues. And this was then only made worse by the Trafalgar Square protest, like I said, with Sir Charles Warren. The police were very heavy-handed in their dealings with the protests there, but also the corruption element, that there was a trial of detectives in 1877 where a lot of police were put on trial for being corrupt, for helping criminals, and that meant people didn't have a lot of trust in the police. Right, I've been talking now for 26 minutes. I did not realise I talked this much. I do apologise that you've had to put up with this for the last 2 years. That's all from me, really. So can I ask, please, that you do a mind map of this sheet here, making sure you're including the keywords at the bottom. Once you've then done that, have a go at looking at the different clips that we've put together. I say we, it's Mrs. Gory. I can't take any credit for this. And then, it's just one clip for this one. And then could you please answer the consolidation questions and send both your mind map and the questions, to me via Teams. Anything you need, I am here. I am going to be doing some tutor calls this afternoon, but that doesn't mean that I won't be in front of my computer, so you can send me an email. Anything you need, give me a shout. Stay safe, and I'll see you back live on the 1st of June. Bye!